Good morning, students. Today, we'll continue the remaining part of the topic human health and disease. In the last session, we had studied about the humoral immunity, in that uh, active, that is natural active immunity and artificial active immunity. The next part or the continuation part of this concept is passive immunity. In that, there are two types, as I told you before, that is natural and also artificial. Okay, passive immunity. As I told you before, passive immunity, so here a individual will get the immunity power from the third person, that is from the mother, that is the baby is connected, or the baby, a newborn baby, or during the phase of their gestation or the pregnancy period, the passive immunity to the baby is directly provided by the mother with the help of protective tissue we come across, that is placenta. During fetal development in mother's womb, all the immunity that is required for the baby, that is mainly brought by the mother blood to the fetal blood, which is very close for the purpose. Along with the providing immunity, it has also got the different purpose of the placenta, that is providing nutrients. During embryonic development, a baby nourishment or the requirement of the nutrients of the baby body is completely dependent upon the mother body, or mother body is going to convey that nutrients via blood to the baby. Next, it is also very important for the transport of oxygen that is required for the baby for the normal respiration process. And whatever the metabolic wastes are produced from the baby, it is mainly removed from this placenta. Okay, and whatever the pathogens that may infect a baby through placenta, definitely the immune system is not so much developed at that time, and that is the reason the young ones has got the more chance of getting infections. That is the reason mother's body condition is very important for protecting the baby during their development. Before birth, what happens? These ready-made antibodies are conveyed from mother's blood to this baby blood with the help of that antibodies only, and we call them as the maternal antibodies. Maternal antibodies means antibodies which are produced by the mother body, and these antibodies, they are conveyed to the young ones or the baby, and later on these antibodies are the main reason how the individual will fight against these pathogens soon after birth, until they develop acquired immunity, until they develop their individual immunity power. And these antibodies are transferred from a mother to fetus, so that that is going to protect the young ones, and these antibodies are transferred through the placenta. Okay, and even though after birth, what happens? Mother's feeding process is very very important, because no other source is substitute to the mother's milk, and these antibodies are also transferred during after birth from mothers to infant through the milk that is conveyed, and it is rich in colostrum. Colostrum is a nutritionally rich component that is produced from mother body to the infant during early stage of their feeding process, and this milk that is produced during initial few days of the lactation is rich in colostrum, but later on also, until they complete the process of feeding process, it may continue for 6 months, 1 year, or 2 year. It all depends upon how better the mother body is supporting for the process of providing milk to the young ones. And here a specific antibody, that is IgA type of antibody, we come across in this colostrum, and whatever the remain in the body, that is going to look after for the short term process. And the maternal antibodies, they are transferred from mother to fetus, and infant. Whereas in case of fetus, that is before birth, this young one is going to get from the placenta or the fetus, and later on in case of infants after birth, it will get by the feeding process, that is consuming the milk of the mothers. And such type of acquired immunity, it is going to acquire, that is ready-made antibodies is received from the third person, means individual body cannot produce, mother will provide that. Okay, such type of is known as the passive acquired immunity through placenta in case of fetus, and whereas in case of infants through the colostrum. And that is what we call it as natural acquired passive immunity. I'll explain once again. In case of passive immunity, that is natural acquired passive immunity, mother will provide the antibodies to the fetus and the infant. Fetus in case of embryonic stage through placenta, and whereas in case of infants through the colostrum. In both the cases, mother body will provide the ready-made antibodies to the young one. And such type of passive immunity is known as natural acquired passive immunity. Okay. Next concept is about passive immunity, which is artificial type. Okay. So here we come across a different scenario. So you can see in this diagram, whenever dog bites, and whenever a snake is also going to bite, in such cases we'll go and take the injections from the some of the expertised persons, or medical prescriptions is taken by the doctors. What they exactly inject, why the injection is taken? Because these injections, they are nothing but ready-made antibodies against the dog bite, or also in case of snake bite. In case of dog bite, what happens? Rabies is one of the viral disease that is mainly spread by the bite of mad dog. When the mad dog is going to bite any person, the virus affects your brain, that potentially fatal. Because no doubt your body is going to produce antibodies, but if you provide so much amount of the time, a person may be in a risky status. So in such cases, what happens? The insufficient time for the body to generate its own immune response is the main reason. What they do, they take these antibodies, that is ready-made antibodies, by the artificial process. So it is known as artificial passive acquired immunity. Whatever may be there, whether it is against to the rabies or against to the snake poison, and these antibodies are obtained from hyper immunized horses, or it may be any experimental animal they may use. So what they do initially, this toxin contents are injected into the body of that animal. It may be experimental animal, maybe the mice or the rabbit or the horse. And as a result, those experimental animal body is going to produce antibodies against these toxins. So these people, what they do, they collect those antibodies in a larger extent, and they are stored to treat any person in case if he come across the same situation, like it may be a mad dog bite or the snake bite. And such cases, what we call it as hyper immunized horses or hyper immunized experimental animal they are going to use. So here hyper immunized, that contains the large quantity of the specific antibodies, and these specific antibodies are mainly used to provide that acquired immunity. So immunity developed, that is by injecting the previously prepared antibodies. Previously prepared antibodies means that is antibodies from the hyperimmunized horses, and that is known as acquired passive immunity. So here using serum from humans or animals. Okay, it is the serum extraction process, and such type of process is known as artificially acquired passive immunity. Example, the antibodies obtained from hyperimmunized horses are injected into the human against the rabies pathogen, or it may be applicable in multiple ways also. So that is how, where the individual body is not uh, in a condition to produce antibodies within that short period. At the time, these antibodies are already prepared, or it is collected from some experimental animals, and such type of immunity is known as artificial acquired passive immunity. So let us make the differentiates between active immunity and passive immunity, for because this part they ask for examination for multiple attempts. What is the difference between active and passive immunity? They may ask it for 3 marks or also 5 marks. Let's make it very clear. It is the immunity developed in our own body when antigens are introduced, that is response to infection or by vaccination. In case of passivity, is the immunity developed in the person by introducing of antibodies that are produced in another organism. That's the first difference. Second one is, it takes times to form and or few in numbers in case of active immunity. Whereas passive immunity, they are already prepared antibodies and they are many in number. Third difference is, it lasts longer, that is gives lifelong immunity. In case of active immunity, you need not to depend on anyone. Your body itself will become strengthened. Whereas in case of passive immunity, it gives short-lived immunity, because whatever the antibodies they are going to inject inside your body, so within that lifespan of those antibodies, you will be protected. After that, again you need to take the antibodies in case of second bite or in case of some other same accidents that are going to be repeated in your life. Fourth, in case of active, the antibodies produced are harmless. In case of active, passive, the antibodies produced may become harmful and they start immune reaction against the host body. This is the chance, because what happens in case of active immunity, there is no question of allergic reactions. Whereas because the whatever the protective components they are produced inside your body only, you don't get the allergic reactions over there. But whereas in case of passive immunity, there is a chance of getting allergic reactions, because those antibodies you are collected from some other animal. It may cope up with your system or it may not cope up with your system. If it not cope up, then definitely will get allergic reactions. Next, it affects for large number of it is effective for large number of infections. There is no specificity. It is quite multiple you can use in case of active, whereas in case of passive, it is effective only for limited infections, like against food poisoning, snake venom, dog bite. For each of them there is specific. You can't use dog bite antibodies for snake venom, or snake venom antibodies for dog bite, or both of those antibodies for the food poisoning. It is very very specific. Okay, this is how you need to represent in case if they are going to ask questions on these concepts, active and passive immunity. Okay, so these are the differences. They are very unique, so you need to point it out here. Okay, by this, in the next session we are done with all the active and the passive, natural immunity and artificial immunity in case of active immunity, and in case of passive immunity also we discussed about natural and artificial immunity. Okay, and the next session will continue with the lymphoid organs. Okay, thank you students.